Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Notre Dame fans. Whenever you're listening or watching this show, watching live, watching back, listen to this as a podcast, really appreciate you for making us part of your day. My name is Mike Singer. I run the recruiting and YouTube operation here at Blue and Gold. And with me is not Tim Hyde. Tim was out last week, and with it's summer, crazy family things, always something going on in the Hyde household. Same thing this week, Wednesday. So I called up Eric Hansen, who now works with us at Blue and Gold, and said, "Hey, Eric, you want to hop on the show?" And Eric said, "Yes, send me a link."
Absolutely.
So here we are. Eric, how's it going? How's the first 9 days with Blue and Gold been?
Like drinking out of a fire hose, but really tasty water. I've really enjoyed the experience and the welcome and the camaraderie, and just having such a great team to work with has been really, really fun.
Yeah. Eric, I feel like I'm taller than you with how I'm all up here. I gotta get down on your level.
Should I?
No, you're
okay.
You're okay. I was like, man, I feel I am a pretty tall guy. I'm not as tall as Tyler James, but I think I'm the tallest on our staff. But yeah, I was, but now I'm second with Mr. James with us. Folks, if you have not done so yet, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel and go to blueandgold.com. I mean, I feel like we have a superstar staff now with Tyler and Eric. It was strong before, and it's even better now. And we go several thousand deep with our members. So go to blueandgold.com, join the club. Yeah. So for tonight's show, guys, we're going to talk about some Notre Dame news. We're going to react to it, and we will have a good time. I was reading the chat. Mark with glasses said, "Can you put your hand over the camera for Lamar Jackson edit?" I don't know what that means. I really don't. There you go. There you go, Mark. Hope you enjoy that. All right. So Notre Dame is absolutely cooking on the recruiting trail.
Yep.
And especially with these NFL legacies. So, and for folks watching on YouTube, you can see the three on the screen there with Thomas Davis Jr. and his dad, who played for the Panthers. Of course, Devin Fitzgerald's dad, Larry Fitzgerald, and Caden Finley, and his father, Jermichael Finley. At the time this picture was taken, I mean, Notre Dame fans, many of you thought Thomas Davis Jr. was gone. He was going to Georgia, right? Fitzgerald was like Notre Dame Clemson going into that official visit weekend. Eric, Clemson people thought he was going to Clemson. And then I'm sure a lot of Notre Dame fans and all Texas fans as well thought Caden Finley was going to Texas. And they landed all three of these guys. And Thomas Davis Jr. announced that he was shutting down his recruitment. So I was talking about this with Tyler James and Kyle Kelly today. The NFL Sons from Marcus Freeman's recruiting classes, Eric. The 2024 class, you had Kenny Durlacher. Of course, he's at USC now. And Bryce Young was in that class. Brian Young was his dad. Jerome Bettis Jr., of course, son of the bus. Jadon Blair, his dad actually had a cup of coffee in the NFL. Elijah Burris, of course, his dad, Plexico Burris. James Flanagan, son of former Notre Dame defensive lineman Jim Flanagan. The three on the screen there. And then if you go to transfers, you have Jordan Clark, his dad, of course, Ryan Clark. Tony Sacca, who was a part of that team that beat Notre Dame, a few decades ago. He played a couple years for the Cardinals. Jaden Osbury's dad had tryouts in the NFL, and then you could go even to like RJ Oben, his dad, Roman Oben. And then last but not least, Gordy Solstad's dad, Alex, was a 6th-round pick and played for the Chiefs, Bengals, and Redskins from 2001 to 2004. Commanders, sorry. What does this say to you, Eric? Is this something? Is this nothing? Is it? There's no way it's a coincidence, right?
It's not a coincidence. And I think what makes it more impressive for me, and let me back up, because, Brian Kelly had his share of former NFL players and their sons going to Notre Dame. And he even had other sports like Corey Robinson with David Robinson and Torrey Hunter Jr. from Torrey Hunter in baseball. But what I really am impressed with is it's happening in the NIL rev share era, where there's some priorities that have started to shift in terms of what you're looking for in a school, and that choose hard still means something. 4 for 40 still means something. And Marcus Freeman and one of your your son to play for Marcus Freeman means a lot. And I think that's where it's really exciting. And, you know, the names you mentioned, there were some Notre Dame fathers there. There were some not Notre Dame fathers, but you looked at that picture and you have in that picture a Texas and a Georgia, and pulling those guys, those are tough pulls.
Yeah.
And to be able to pull those guys away from those two colleges in particular, I thought was pretty impressive. What do you think, Mike?
This recruiting run is unparalleled to my 6 years on the beat, Eric. Like, you covered that, you know, Notre Dame in that 2013 cycle, which let me do a quick side note. I was just in South Bend last week and I said something. We were at dinner. And I said to Eric, how many people worked with you and Lou? Has anyone else come to your mind besides me? I don't know if you've given that a second thought.
I have given it a second thought. I did think about it and I don't think there is anybody. Now they may have ridden in a car with us, but not worked with us both. It
is one of my biggest honors to say that. And like working with Eric for 9 days, like, Eric, I don't know if you can recall things. Well, I know you don't. You can't recall things like Lou, but
no,
there's so many similarities. And I mean that in definitely a good way with working with you and working with Lou. It's been like a breath of fresh air for me because I've really, really missed working with Lou for the past 4 years. And it's been great just in 9 days with working for you. So, yeah, I'm over the moon about it. But going back to what I was going to say, that 2013 class that finished top 5. I mean, I know you weren't like on the recruiting beat specifically, right, Eric, but do you remember like were the vibes similar with that class as this one in 2026?
It was a little bit different. I mean, you were coming off the 2012 championship game appearance and so forth. And there were a lot of guys that Notre Dame was able to kind of poach out of other classes at the end. And then I think it was clouded a little bit with Eddie Vanderdoes ending up not enrolling at Notre Dame and so forth. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this because it's feeding into this thought that Notre Dame has a chance to win a national championship. I think when they got blown out by Alabama, people talked about closing the gap, but they still felt like Notre Dame was pretty far away. I think when you think about this recruiting class and what's happening, you think about this is playing into the vibe that Notre Dame's going to win a national championship or at least have a shot at it again in the next few years, if not this year. And so that's amazing. And when we think about where recruiting was back in February, where there was a lot of people, you know, I'm sure you had to talk a lot of people off the ledge after Chad Bowden left, but it's really something. And again, we're playing in a different rule book. We're playing with rev share and NIL and things like that. And I think there was a fear too that people felt like, well, Notre Dame stands for this. They're not going to be a player in that world. And they're an absolute player in that world. And Marcus Freeman does have the wind at his back when it comes to the administration. And I think all those things are exciting and all those things feed into the recruiting.
Yeah. I posted an article today with Kari Adams. I highly recommend reading that. Plus the one from Joey O'Brien, my interview with him on the 8th that I published. I thought they were outstanding interviews. Getting these kids to reflect on their recruitments. And Joey said that, I think I tweeted a graphic. Let me just pull it up and read it in case some folks did not see this. He said, I was set on Oregon after my official visit there. I was thinking Notre Dame has been there since the beginning. Let me be respectful, give them their visit, and then I'll just go to Oregon. And he said, but the first night on my Notre Dame OV, it all changed. I was like, wow, this place is amazing. After Joey told me that in the phone call, I told Joey, I was like, listen, man, you've done many of these interviews. I'm gonna kind of press you a little bit. Mm-hmm. He was like, all right, Mike, what do you mean? I was like, Because he told me early in the interview, he like after each of his OVs, like that was the number one school. And then even reporting on him in the spring from like Steve Wiltfong, that was the case. We like go to Notre Dame, they were the school to beat, Michigan school to beat. I was like, who's to say that's not going to change for you in like the fall, like that maybe you're not going to love Notre Dame as much. And he was like, I think Oregon's still going to try to get me to flip. He's like, I'm not worried about it. Like, I'm good with Notre Dame. And I was like, all right. I totally got the vibe that, yeah, he's good. And Kari Adams told me that he thought he was going to Penn State after his official visit there. And he's locked in with Notre Dame as well. These are just recruiting wins, Eric, that we just don't like. You see them right in the past 6 years. I can just speak to my time on the beat, but you've seen them, but not this many. You go to the Ian Premer one, beating, it's okay. It's Kansas State and Iowa State, but for kids in that part of the country, like you're a Kansas kid, you go to Kansas State. I read a stat off in a recent show that Notre Dame is like the only school in recent years that's been able to go into Kansas and land a kid over Kansas State. And they did it 3 times with Premer, Dylan Edwards, who decommitted, but Derek Young, the Kansas State reporter, still counted it. And then Joe Otting. It's impressive. So I'm really amped about Notre Dame recruiting right now for these recruiting wins, this class. Like, I think it's definitely got the potential to finish as, arguably, well, maybe not even arguably, just according to the data, as Notre Dame's best recruiting class in this internet era from the past, which I think goes back to like 2004, Eric.
What I wanted to ask you was, what was it that those two experienced on their official visit at Notre Dame that changed?
Yeah. So, when Notre Dame had 21 official visitors for one weekend, and then the next weekend it was going to be like 9 or 10, and then it ended up being 6 because some guys, committed elsewhere. But a very common thing that we would see on the message board, Eric, was 21. You can't spend enough time with the guys. It's too much. It's too many. I'm going to write a column about this either tomorrow or Friday about why that was the best decision that Notre Dame, like that everyone who visited, how there was like a line group and then like a skill position group, those guys intertwined, but it was just genius. It was genius. I don't even know if Notre Dame intended fully that it was going to work out as perfectly as it did. I think I've talked to 14 or 15 of the official visitors that weekend. Every single one of them said their favorite part of the OV weekend, Eric, was spending time with each other. Like Notre Dame, the commits just recruited they just recruited each other. It just worked out. By the end of Kari's official visit, he was with Joey O'Brien. He was recruiting Joey to join him. Kari hadn't even committed yet. And he was like, dude, we got to come here together. So I would say the biggest thing was the camaraderie. Dylan Faison, Thomas Davis Jr., Noah Grubbs, like faces, leaders of the class. They just clicked. They're all talking about how like-minded they were with each other. That would be my thought to that. What do you think, Eric?
I think that's really interesting. And I also wonder, I wanted to ask you too about the official visits that are now in June. I know when you got into this, that wasn't the case. You didn't have official visits in the spring and in the summer. And I think game day is amazing. A lot of these guys get up for their unofficials for game day and so forth. But do you think that helps Notre Dame, this calendar shift where they're doing unofficials in the spring and they're doing officials in June, and South Bend's beautiful in June? Not that it isn't beautiful in the fall, but man, I remember when I first started covering it, the banquet weekend was the big weekend.
Always.
And it was freezing here.
Yeah, no, I remember even the 2020 class, the banquet was a big weekend. You had some targets in town for that. The way that Notre Dame does it now, Eric, is their cycle is like when they want kids to visit is pretty well defined. So let's say it starts for Pot of Gold Day.
Yeah.
That's when Notre Dame really kicks off their recruiting for a prospect. Then they really want the kid to visit in the spring. come to a spring practice or come to the spring game, maybe both.
Right.
Then come to the Grill and Chill. Now, in years past, that was at the end of July. Now, the whole month of July is a dead period, so they had the Grill and Chill for after Irish Invasion, but still, come in the summer, do a camp or come hang out. That's like visit number 2. Visit number 3 is now, so you're a high school junior, come for a game. Come for the Texas A&M night game. Come for the Miami game. Come for the USC game. Come for a marquee night game. And then come for junior day in January. Come for spring for an unofficial again. And then your official visit, commit. And then these kids want to be committed by the start of their senior season.
Right.
Some don't, but it's like 90% of most classes are done by August or at least September. So that's it. You have the spring visit, summer visit, fall visit, spring visit, official visit 5 times, commit to Notre Dame, if not beforehand. Like if you look at Joey O'Brien or Kari Adams' visit list, I'm sure they're between 4 and 6. Like that's kind of the sweet spot. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
it
I
does.
think it's
Good.
it's laid out pretty well by how they like to do it.
I got one more if I can throw it at you.
Yeah, sure. I am enjoying this.
Okay. Where does Mike Martin fit and his staff fit into this? Where do they fit into this surge?
Martin, I'm still trying to learn the specifics of Martin because it's like Carter Almond is more Chad Bowden role than I think Martin was. Like Chad was such as the GM. Some of these titles are, just titles. Like I don't know how to better explain that, but like a director of player personnel one year might be completely different than the next year, or it's different from school to school.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Martin, his GM role, he's just different than Chad. Like I think it's more on the NIL side. Like I definitely hear like when Tiki Hola was very close to committing to Notre Dame, he had the NIL talk with Mike Martin. Like I hear that. Like I know that's kind of the last call I think before you call Freeman to commit is to Mike Martin. And then the recruiting office, I mean Carter, Myron, Jordan Blake, these are just daily contact, loving the kids up, making sure everything is scheduled, making sure that the assistant coaches are calling, and just kind of like the engine behind their operation. Like if a coach is like the pretty wheels or whatever cosmetics of the car, it's probably not a great example, but I think like the recruiting office is kind of like the engine of it. And then I'll throw out there the analysts have been empowered at Notre Dame, like Harris Biven, who works with the tight ends, Dom Spalding with the receivers, Javon Codlin gets mentioned a ton with the defensive backs. There's a couple special teams guys that when Sean Kraft, the long snapper, committed, they mentioned him. The offensive line analyst does a really good job. His name is escaping me. I apologize.
It Delaney?
Yeah, Rob Delaney. Yeah, I think he does a really good job. And then Kurt Rawlings has always done a good job with the quarterbacks. So, man, you got me like I'm like juiced up over here. These are great questions. I didn't expect that, but it was awesome. I like it. Let's hear from a sponsor, Augie's Locker Room, folks. If you're local, you're coming to town, drive through, whatever the case may be, especially coming in for a game day, got to make sure you head to Augie's Locker Room, which is a one-of-a-kind place to find Notre Dame memorabilia. So make sure you go to Augie's Locker Room, which does have a new location as of coming up on a couple of years ago now, 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend. It's just down the street from Notre Dame. So check out the exclusive Joe Montana signed items, famous sculpture Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statue around the stadium. And Augie does get new stuff in all the time. Since I last read an Augie's read, these, 2002 team issue Notre Dame football green jersey. This is, I have not seen these before. So this is one of a kind stuff. And if you see something that's not, or there's something you want that Augie doesn't have, give them a call, 574-277-6363. Go to Augie's Locker Room.com. I'm sure you've been to Augie's over the years, Eric.
And I've met him before, and he's a good dude.
I've met him before as well. Yeah, I was in South Bend working. He just showed up at our old office Yeah, Augie's he's a great guy, and obviously Augie's locker room is iconic. So here was the news on July 6th. Sophomore offensive lineman Charles Jagasaw being injured in a UTV accident in Wyoming. Had surgery to repair a fracture on his left humerus. The initial prognosis is favorable. I'm reading for folks listening to this as a podcast. I'm reading the PR tweet from Notre Dame. Favorable. I don't know what that means, but I'll take it. I'll take it as positive. And he will return to campus early this week for further evaluation and continued care. Eric, I did a video with Jack on this. I know you've talked about it with Tyler James. We've written about it. I thought your article on leadership at blueandgold.com was fantastic. So if you like reading Eric's work, go to blueandgold.com. Plus, it is time to submit your mailbag questions. So go to blueandgold.com for that as well. But I'm about done talking about Charles, but this is our flagship show at Blue and Gold. So thoughts on this, Eric, this incident?
Well, it's disappointing. I'm sure for him, it's disappointing for Notre Dame fans, for the coaching staff. And for me, it's about how do you move forward with this? Charles had a torn pectoral injury last year at the start of training camp. He missed most of his freshman year because of a PCL, ACL issue in high school that he played with. He wouldn't even known he had it, but he was trying to cut weight to defend his heavyweight championship in Illinois wrestling, and he just couldn't get the weight off and thought, well, it's a bad hammy. But I know that a lot of people are saying, what's he doing? And I think you do have to be smart with things, but you also have to, live your life. UTV, probably something that you'd want to stay away from. But, Tyler Buckner got hurt walking down the stairs after class. I know there was one spring, I think it was Drew White had a water skiing accident.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't a injury that carried into the season, but it was something that affected him during spring football and so forth. It's going to be interesting to me, Mike, when we get down the road a little bit further into this rev share. I don't think that you can put clauses in guys' contracts now and not have a lawsuit that says, well, we're employees. But once this gets to maybe a collective bargaining phase and so forth, then I think you'll start to see those kinds of clauses and contracts.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to it other than it's late and we're trying to get this confirmed?
I was playing video games with my friend. I was like, that was because we were working on that late night on the 5th. And I heard from an initial source who said, yes, this is legit. And then, obviously the next morning, Notre Dame put out that statement to kind of stop the flurry of rumors and confirm it. Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle on both ends of people being like, this is, hey, let the kids be kids and, whatever. This is a nothing story. I mean, I talked to a recruit. I posted an article on Bubba Frazier today. He said he was playing basketball in Marcus Freeman's backyard on his official visit. Like, what are we going to say? Like, a kid can't play basketball? Could you imagine if, knock on wood, a kid to get hurt on his official visit? Like, what the stories would be then? It's sort of similar, but at the same time, and a UTV is not as dangerous as an ATV, from what I understand.
Yeah,
like an ATV, just like a 4-wheeler, right?
Right.
I've been on those. Like a UTV seems a little bit more sturdy and maybe less prone to tip or whatever, but it's a risk. So I don't think it's a completely nothing it's just a freak accident. We don't have all the details, but I think that there's definitely there's a risk factor, and I don't think that was the smartest decision. Like, you hear about these injuries all the time, I feel like, Eric, on these kind of 4-wheelers.
Well, let me ask you this, because you brought up basketball, and I think that's a good point. I was talking to Eli Reardon, and he said he was playing with basketball with some of the it was Jacobson and some of the other players and recruits, and they were going
Freeman's
at a pretty
house.
good, Freeman's house probably, and there was Maris Leofow told me he used to play until he got his butt kicked several times, one-on-one with Sonia Citron, who's his girlfriend. And there used to be football players every spring playing the bookstore basketball tournament, if you can remember. Brian Kelly ended up putting the kibosh on that eventually during his time there. But up until then, the best players on your team were on those bookstore basketball teams. And so, and Sullivan Absher was talking recently about how much he plays pickup basketball at the Joyce Center. So what's your thoughts? I mean, is basketball a risk? Is that should that be included in the no list?
Probably not. Worst happens, it's gonna be like you roll your ankle. Most, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
not worse, but likely. I think it's the optics of being in Wyoming and doing these things. That it's probably that. If Charles got hurt, like rolled his ankle, and he was like, oh, he may miss start of fall camp, there'll still be some pitchforks, getting out there and people being upset. But I think it's more worse optics on it. And from what I'm being told, Eric, I think best case scenario is early to mid-October coming back, which means he's definitely missing those first 2 games. And worst case, I'm not just speculating on this. I mean, some of it is speculatory, but I'm talking to people about this. Is maybe like his 2024 to 25 season, where he just kind of came back for the playoffs. Like it's somewhere in that like 3 to 5, 6 months range, which is would again kind of put him between like October and January. And we will definitely work on getting more confirmation while respecting Charles, and also, we'll hear from Marcus Freeman, at the end of the month. So, yeah. So that's Charles. And then moving forward, what would your preferred 5-man offensive line be, Eric?
The name that jumps out at me, and I'm writing about him for tomorrow, is Sullivan Absher. Came in as a tackle, has been playing more guard, took some center snaps in the spring. Talked to his high school coach last night. I mean, he's a really, really good athlete. He's worked really hard to get into that conversation. Is he in the best 5? Even with a healthy Jagaza, he's trying to push into that. Play basketball, play golf, play baseball. So good all-around athlete. And he's worked on his weaknesses. I mean, he needed to have more core strength. And so I think he's the natural choice. I do think there's some others. If you played around with the thought of moving Anthony Knapp away from left tackle, you could put an inexperienced left tackle in there, but somebody with super high ceiling like Garby Lambert or Will Black. The problem with Garby Lambert is the spring labrum surgery. He's going to miss a good chunk of August, most likely. And so, and Garby Lambert also took some reps at guard. I mean, he's got to be in the conversation for at least your best 8. The reviews I've got from Will Black is he moves like a future starting left tackle. And it's just how quickly we'll get used to dealing with somebody like Boubacar Traore. Because he certainly has the athletic ability, and he's a little bit older. He took the prep school year and so forth. He's from Canada, and he's just really learned the game very quickly. But, if you're moving Anthony Knapp away, then you're losing that experience that he gained last year.
Right.
So I probably keep him where he is and see who your next best guard. And it keeps pushing me towards Absher, but I'm open to somebody else, challenging as well.
Yeah. Think back, was this just last year? Yeah. When it looked like Tosh Baker was going to be the guy after Charles got hurt, and then Knapp just emerges out of nowhere. Like, I'm pretty sure Rudolph said on the record, more or less, Tosh is going to start, and then Knapp comes out of nowhere.
Right.
So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And if someone
and Pendleton kind of came out of nowhere too. in that battle.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe like a freaking Joe Otting. I don't know. Who knows? Someone comes out of nowhere and grabs a. I think
The guy that
center, but
if it were a tackle we were talking about, the guy that kind of came out of the nowhere a little bit in the spring just because he was injured last year and he wasn't, a 5-star guy coming out. It was Prescott. Styles Prescott had a good spring.
He did. Yeah, he got a lot of good reviews coming out of spring ball. Folks, if you have not done so yet, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel for more content. If you're just joining us, Tim Hyde had to take this Wednesday off as well with some look. Tim Hyde's got 3 kids, or does he have 4? I think he's got 3, but young kids. So it's summertime. It's busy. So Tim is not live with us, but we're hoping to get him back next week. With me is Eric Hansen, new coworker, Blue and Gold. Make sure you search on YouTube, Eric Hansen and Tyler James. You can find their channel if you're not subscribed, and they go live every Monday at 7 Eastern. Usually every Monday, Eric. 7 Eastern?
Usually, and 7 Eastern, yes.
Yeah, so make sure you watch Football Never Sleeps. And someone just said in the comments, Mike, what is that magazine? Thank you for asking someone. Actually, no one asked this. This is the Blue and Gold. I'm gonna promo it though. The Labor of Love with Jeremiah Love. Fantastic cover. I personally would say the best article in here was this one. It was written by it's over here, Mike Singer. I don't know who that guy is, but he sounds awesome. So check it out.
Was that Noah Grubbs?
Yeah, I did a full feature on Noah, and I hope his parents don't mind me saying this, but they both texted me and said, because I interviewed his offensive coordinator for it, and they both texted and they were like, how did you get that much information out of Coach Donnelly? And I said, I guess I just got a good rapport with the guy. Been working, I've known him for 10 years, so that probably helps. But I thought it turned out to be a great story. So get to know Notre Dame's quarterback commits, plus so much more. So yeah, bluegoldonline.com to purchase. If you go to the website, bluegoldonline.com, click here, and 160 page full color glossy magazine covering Fighting Irish football. It is a must have for the 2025 season. I'm also going to punch that link in the chat, pop it up on the screen. Sly says Eric Hansen's a class act. Completely agree.
Thank you.
bluegoldonline.com. Eric and Tyler did not join Blue and Gold until July 1st. So they did get to work on this, but we're gonna put you to work for next year's, Eric. So
I was talking to Steve Downey already today.
It's going to be awesome. So check that out, bluegoldonline.com. Eric, you wrote this really neat article. I love this idea. Headline, Beyond the Stars, 10 Notre Dame football wildcards who could raise the ceiling in 2025. So blueandgold.com, check that one out. I want to discuss 2 specifically. We're not going to go through all 10. We want that to be for our blueandgold.com subscribers. But I want to go through 2. One of them being Cam Williams, a very hot topic player since, Eric, you know this. I feel like you are probably usually the one asking Brian Kelly about Jordan Johnson every week. Like, when are we going to see Jordan? Was that usually you, Eric?
Not always, but I was in that. I was in that camp.
Yeah, when are we going to see the 5-star freshman?
Is Jordan Johnson injured?
Is he on the team? Is he on a milk carton somewhere? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember. So there's always that, like, when Notre Dame does get a super high profile wide receiver, like a Jordan Johnson, like a Cam Williams, we want to see him. When I say we, I'm talking as a Notre Dame community. So where are you at with Cam Williams entering? He's just going into his sophomore year. He's still a kid.
Right.
But where are you staying with him?
Yeah, well, I was really curious about him just because of his high ranking. And then when you talk to him, personable, coachable, hardworking guy, and you're thinking, okay, why isn't this clicking? It became kind of a mystery for me. And the fortunate thing is that we get to talk to coordinators on a weekly basis. Yep. And Mike Denbrock, this is my 3rd time covering Mike as a Notre Dame assistant coach. So I've gotten to know him pretty well. And he had some pretty good answers about it. He felt like, not everybody develops at the same time, and there's different reasons for it. Jordan Greathouse played in a system where they were learning how to read college defense, or college level type defenses. Cam Williams was like, go run down the field. And Golden Tate was like that too when he was a freshman. Was like, run as fast as you can. And he didn't have a lot of protection as a freshman. You look at even some of the guys that were recently drafted out of Notre Dame that played wide receiver. Chase Claypool had 6 catches. Will Fuller had 6 catches. Equanimous St. Brown had 1. Miles Boykin had 0. So what happened in Cam Williams' case, what Mike Denbrock said is the 7-on-7 circuit didn't do him favors. Sometimes it gets kids exposure, but sometimes you get in, especially if you're as talented as Cam, you get some bad habits and you don't learn the precision route running. You don't learn how to read defenses because you're so good you don't need to. But then you get to Notre Dame and other people are at your level and you're going against Ben Morrison in practice and you have to say, okay, I need to learn how to do this. So I felt like the spring was really critical for him. And I thought at least he made enough progress to get on the radar. And I think this is a real important window for him in fall camp because you think about the wide receivers Notre Dame signing, especially in the 2026 class. But, you look at this team and the path of least resistance is that field receiver. He spent the spring at the boundary receiver just to get more reps since Malachi Fields wasn't here yet. I think a good sign for Cam would be as if he moved back over to the field side in training camp, because if he's behind Malachi Fields and Micah Gilbert, then I think he's kind of buried.
Not to get too off topic, Eric, but when you mentioned Greathouse and like that, what they did, like Westlake, is simply incredible. So I was in Texas for a family vacation in August of 2020. And at that point, I had not covered a single quarterback recruitment yet because when I joined the beat, Eric, Pine and Buckner were already committed. I had to wait 15 months for them to offer their first quarterback. So this tweet right here is from August 27th of 2020. They had not offered Angeli and Gavin Wimsatt yet. So I went to see Cade Klubnik, who's of course now star Clemson quarterback. And Greathouse is one of these receivers. I think it's possible he wasn't there, but this was at 5 a.m. This was their workout. Eric, I mean, I've been covering, or I played high school ball and then, covered high school football and worked at Rivals and had been to, so many of these practices and games. There was not, you could hear a pin drop in the stadium. It was all business. I had never seen anything like this workout. So there's a reason that Jaden Greathouse comes to Notre Dame as such a polished product, because like this is what they're doing. Like it's a just different ball game in the state of Texas. Tim Hyde talked about this in our video commitment video talking about Caden Finley. Like Texas is just a throwing state. Like there's just so much money in state of Texas high school football that there's just so much resources. The coaches are phenomenal. So like a long way to say Greathouse, Caden Finley, these guys come in ready to go. Cam Williams, man, time's now for sure. Or I mean, I guess you junior year but yeah, like you said, this 2025 class, Burris coming in, I think he's going to be more ready to go than people think. And then Finley's going to come in looking to play. For sure. I think Caden Finley could be a year one guy. Charles Power, director of On3 scouting and rankings, or I guess Rivals now, said that he's like top 5 polished, ready to go wide receiver in the entire 26 class. Talking about Finley. So yeah, it's now. It's now. So, and then your other guy, Eric, was Ty Washington, probably one of the least talked about players on this team. I think we just forget about him so often. He committed on, I think, Christmas Eve. So many of us, weren't even paying attention to the news that day. But the Arkansas tight end transfer with 2 years of eligibility. Why is he a wild card on this team?
First of all, opportunity. I think once you get past Eli Reardon, it's wide open. Kevin Bauman is a great story. Even if he didn't catch a ball, I mean, him coming back for a 6th year and just all the injuries he's come back from. amazing story. To expect him to be the number 2 tight end, I think, is a big ask. To expect him to be a great leader and contribute, I think, is reasonable. So who's number 2? I think it's going to end up being James Flanagan or Ty Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Why I think that Ty Washington is in the mixer, I think if you ask Marcus Freeman, he'd shrug his shoulders. He doesn't really know what he has in him yet, or he didn't at the beginning of June anyways, when he enrolled. Mike Denbrock pounded the table for that guy, a guy that got dismissed from his Arkansas team, and he had a story about why that happened. But Mike Denbrock was familiar with Ty from trying to recruit him to Cincinnati. He ended up at Arkansas, and just feels like there's a really good athlete there, a guy with a really good attitude despite having gotten dismissed from his Arkansas team, somebody that learned from that. I think Mike Denbrock is pretty fired up about him. We'll have to get him on the record when we talk to the coaches at the beginning of August. But I think that's a name that will come up. And I know that from the rumblings that I was hearing in the early June workouts, he was impressing. So that to me was enough to kind of take a flyer on him, because again, the opportunity's there. James Flanagan, I think, is going to be in that conversation as well.
I completely agree. Not to get too far off track, but I'm curious for your take on this, Eric. I'm going to test your knowledge about this 25 class, but in years past, there's typically a summer enrollee surprise impact performer.
Right.
You think back to Clarence Lewis. No one saw him beating out Tariq Bracy in 2019. To there was one in 2020. I can't remember now, but Joe Alt. No one saw Joe Alt, and then Ben Morrison. Who thought Ben Morrison was going to start as a true freshman? To Leonard Moore last year. Like I feel like there's a line of that. Actually, that would have been Clarence Lewis in 2020. I just can't remember there was definitely one in 2021. But do you think there's one in 25? I thought about this because James Flanagan wouldn't be a surprise to me, but maybe a surprise to some if he emerged as that summer enrollee. So some, again, who wasn't there for spring ball, but Flanagan could be one. I'll pull up the 25 class. Any names come to the top of your mind for that?
Well,
maybe Will Black now.
Yeah, maybe Will Black. Again, is it a surprise or not a surprise? I don't think it's a surprise if either of those corners are in a rotation.
Zachary and Golden, yeah.
Brandon Logan would be a surprise to me, given all the other safeties. I think if Notre Dame had normal linebackers like they used to, and not this super group of linebackers, you could throw Anthony Sackett in there. But again, he was a pretty highly recruited guy. But I don't think, given who they have in their 5-man rotation, that's happening. So, Will Black may be on offense. We talked about James Flanagan. There's not a lot of late enrollees on the offensive side. So you're really looking at the defensive linemen. Is Chris Burgess a surprise? Would that be a surprise if Chris was a early contributor? Would you count that? He would be a guy that I think has a chance.
Yeah.
For how athletic he is.
Yeah. I mean, surprise, it's very much in the eye of the beholder. So it is very subjective, but I'm not expecting Chris Burgess so that would be a surprise to me. He's an elite talent for sure. Right. I mean,
but there's a lot of numbers on
there
both
is
end and
so I would say so.
Where he's going to end up at. Marcus Freeman mentioned that he's going to be a defensive tackle. Now, is that going to happen this year or next year? He came in at 270. So he may
Did he really?
Yes. Yeah. That's what he came in at.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Look, if you go to Notre Dame's website, they weighed those guys at the beginning. Is he listed at 270 there? He was 245, I think, when he was a recruit.
Yeah.
But he is 270 now on their new roster. So he's already getting to be the size to move inside. So that would be possibly somebody. But again, there's lots of numbers, and they fortified the interior with some transfers. And then Jason Anye coming back was a big lift for that position group. Even with Jordan Botello out until October, we think, then you still look at those defensive ends, especially if now they're interchangeable. Before you were a little bit more specialized with the field and the Viper ends. Now that they're interchangeable, you have a pretty good inventory there. So it's hard to think about a lot of surprises. I don't think Hulak and Reef are ready yet. Definitely Solfstead not yet.
Right.
So I think that would be a huge surprise if one of those guys emerged, and that's not what I was hearing. But Burgess was impressing people in terms of how well he was moving. Again, the coaches see them without the ball. The players will see him with the ball with some of the workouts.
All right, wrapping up the show, I want to get Eric's reaction to a couple of things. PFF put out top 10 head coaches list. Like these head coaching lists, Eric, are like just the offseason gold for us at Blue and Gold, because I feel like me and Tim have looked at so many of these when it's like, well, there's nothing to talk about, the dog days of February, but we got one in here in July. Here's in order from 1 to 10: Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Dabo Swinney, Dan Lanning, Marcus Freeman, Steve Sarkisian, Kalen DeBoer, James Franklin, Brian Kelly, and Curt Cignetti. What is your thoughts on this list, Eric? What do you agree? What do you disagree with?
I think that's a pretty good list. It's interesting where Marcus lands. He wasn't on anybody's list last year. He didn't have enough.
You know what list he was on?
What?
In September was the shit list. But it's
okay.
You lose to NIU, and it's like, is Freeman the guy? Those are the conversations. What a turnaround. Sorry for the language. But
I think 8, 9, and 10 are pretty interesting on this list.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Brian Kelly is a pretty good coach. He hasn't won the big games, and that's hurt James Franklin as well. Curt Cignetti, I do think he's a good X's and O's guy. I'd like to see him a little bit more at the power conference level to see what he does over time. I think he was really smart with taking so many James Madison guys into Indiana that knew his system. Now, what does that look like in year 2 and year 3? It'll be interesting to see what his staying power is. And then you think about some of the guys not on the list, and a lot of the guys I like don't have yet the enough games under their belt to maybe make the list. But some of the guys that I thought about, Mike, were like Lane Kiffin. You can make a case for him. Mario Cristobal, Kenny Dillingham, again, maybe not enough games at Arizona State. Matt Campbell used to always be everybody's top 10 and was always the candidate to fill in the name of the college. And then Mike Elko, I think, eventually will be on that list. He's certainly at a school that has that kind of expectations for their coaches and has the wallet for it too. So what were your thoughts on that top 10?
Yeah. I think 1, Kirby he's got to be there, right? 2 and 3 might be interchangeable.
Yeah.
What about 4 and 5 for you? I feel like they potentially could be as well. I mean, like, especially after the playoff run that Freeman just had. I'm curious what the chat thinks as well, because I feel like 2 and 3 you could swap, and 4 and 5 you can swap. But I think it is a really good list.
Right. I think it's really going to be interesting to watch Kalen DeBoer this year. That was a really difficult act to follow, but I've always liked him before he got to Alabama. And he's recruiting really well this cycle. So I think that's an interesting guy to have at 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is Permax Chadwick, the PFF top 10 head coaches in the game. I thought it was a pretty solid list. And then I saw this from Joel Klatt: 10 teams most likely to make first college football playoffs. This isn't Notre Dame specific, obviously, because the Irish have made the college football playoff. But top spot Illinois is a very trendy team in the offseason. He's got Ole Miss, South Carolina, Miami. Miami's an interesting one. Iowa, Missouri, USC. What a key year it is for Lincoln Riley. Kansas State, Florida, and Nebraska. Anything come to mind when you see this? Any quick reaction?
Iowa's going to have to convince me. I like the Ole Miss pick. I actually like the Illinois pick. I think they have a chance to get there. I just found out, again, I will be an AP top 25 voter, so I'm going to have to get moving on this list. I have a August 1st deadline. I think the poll is released 10 days after. I don't know if it takes them that long to count it, or if they want to give us a drug test or whatever for our picks. But I'm going to be doing that again. So I'll be diving into that here pretty soon. But I think that's a really interesting list. Nebraska is really interesting to me. I really like Matt Rule as a head coach. I have a friend that's a big Nebraska fan, and I said, boy, if he's not the coach that gets Nebraska back,
who is?
Yeah, who is? And I do think rev share and NIL helps Nebraska.
Yes.
So we'll see if he can pull that off. So what are your thoughts? Who do you like and who do you not like?
I don't really have super strong feelings on it. South Carolina is such a tough. It's got to be tough to be South Carolina. I feel for South Carolina. Some of these, like my father-in-law is a Wisconsin fan.
Okay.
It's like as a football program, what is Wisconsin's ceiling? What's South Carolina's ceiling? Like, can they ever win their conference? Like, I just feel like the expanded conferences is so tough for teams like that. How can South Carolina break through the SEC and make the college football playoff? I don't see it. I doubt this will make a South Carolina fans, YouTube algorithm. They're not going to see this, but I'm sure Gamecock fans would hate me for saying that. But the Miami and USC thing is very interesting, because you would imagine for them to make it, they probably have to beat Notre Dame. I mean, there's obviously scenarios where they could lose to Notre Dame, still make it, obviously. But I just don't see those teams being like 11-1 teams with just a Notre Dame loss. Like, I feel like they would have a couple losses, but like a marquee Notre Dame win. But that was just my thought. Like, Miami 4 seemed high to me. Like, is Carson Beck that good?
That's the question. Is Carson Beck that good? I think the earlier version of him was better than last year's version of him. And so what are we going to get with him at Miami? That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. And then what's your take on USC? Eric, I mean, just these conversations and questions I'm asking you, I've never asked you these things before. I've never really had a conversation with you. So this is fun for me. So I'm curious your thoughts on USC heading into this fall.
I mean, they got to learn how to play defense. And I know that they're trying to recruit to that side of the ball, and they've tried to hit the portal and so forth, but they've got to learn how to play defense if they're going to make that list, and if they're going to challenge Notre Dame. They certainly had wide receivers last year. But I was I'm sure I had USC in my preseason top 25 last year, and probably thought they were going to be a better team than they were. And so this is a really interesting year for Lincoln Riley. And it'll be interesting, Mike. What do you think? Let's play this game. What if USC kind of has the same season they had last year? What do you think happens to USC's recruiting class?
Oh, the recruiting class.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like you have to ask what happens with Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, that's part of the equation
at that point, because in years past, like USC, like SoCal kids can rally around what, like even with like Clay Helton, when he was in it, like I think it was Clay Helton initially like the interim guy, right, and then became the head coach after. Like the USC really rallied around him. So it's like if Lincoln struggles, but it's because of this, and that, and the other thing, but we're going to really rally around Lincoln. This is our guy. Like, or who knows? He could get fired, and then there's that new coach bounce, and if they were to like keep a Chad Bowden and he like tries to keep it together, like I could see it falling apart. I could see them rallying around. I would have no idea in that scenario, because so many of those are SoCal kids, in that class, right? Just thinking about some of them at the top of my head. But they also, I mean, they've got 30 kids, so I'm sure they're going all over the place. That's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah, I would imagine it's a lot to do with Lincoln. And I mean, his buyout's got to be crazy.
The other thing that's kind of interesting to me, Mike, and I don't know how much you've gotten into this yet with just talking to recruits because we haven't gone through the full cycle. But with this rev share, there's supposed to be a cap. So you're calculating how much you're giving each of these kids. Well, if somebody decommits, and then you want to go after somebody else, what if it's going to cost you more money? Are you going to stay under your cap? I mean, there is this calculus that you're dealing with now and putting these classes together and so forth.
With the whole rev share thing and so many other things in the NIL thing, like the house settlement, Eric, I'm going to be completely honest with you. To this day, I have no idea what the house settlement. I have no idea what it means. Eric, I'm more of the someone wake me up when this shit gets figured out because I hate it. I hate all of the legalese.
Your daughter's going to be in college.
And it's like something's going to get figured out, but then there's going to be 6 other things. So I'm very much just going to bury my head in the sand. And when this stuff gets to me, I'll worry about it. I know there's other recruiting reporters who are like talking to NIL agents and all this stuff. And maybe I need to get with the times, but covering Notre Dame, there's a lot, I know a handful of recruits already have agents. Right. But it's not like a big thing yet for Notre Dame recruiting. Like I'm not hearing, I need to ask my agent, or the agent said this, or the agent's involved. I personally haven't had that with Notre Dame yet. I know with other beats, recruiting reporters are very, that's a part of their job is talking about NIL agents, but it's not over here. So I wish I had more for you, Eric. I think
that's refreshing. That actually,
of college football.
It's not something. It's kind of like having to take math class. It's something that you have to do, but you don't look forward to it. And honestly, it's not what I don't think people want to read about it. I think they want to still read about their team and team chemistry and what the part of college football they fell in love with. And so they'll take the other stuff, but I think they still want to know about the things that they love.
Yeah. There's so much toothpaste outside of the tube that just, it's not going back in.
Well, there better be clean teeth then.
Is there though? Is there, going back to your point about like, whatever the profit or the sharing is,
right?
Are the teams going to play by the rules? Are they going to have clean teeth? Are their hands going to? I can't imagine. Imagine.
In the story I did with Dave Poloquin the other day, he was talking about the first thing when you have new rules is people trying to figure out how to circumvent them. Not necessarily cheat, but certainly stretch them and find loopholes, and some cheat.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Tex ND said, "Welcome to Blue and Gold, Eric." Probably said earlier, but I was late. Well, Tex ND, welcome in. Never too late.
Thank you.
And then there's a rewind button. Yeah, welcome to Blue and Gold, Eric. So excited to have you here. A super chat from Jim O'Brien. Will Notre Dame's next starting quarterback break Ian Book's total wins? What do you think, Eric?
That's a good question.
What's your crystal ball?
Well, from the standpoint of how long is that quarterback going to stay in college, So now we've reconfigured how we think of these guys. CJ Carr is now a redshirt freshman because that's what Notre Dame calls him finally. He's a freshman, but he's actually a college sophomore. Would he stay longer than 3 years? And if he's there 3 years and he is the starting quarterback all those years, yeah, he would have a chance if my math isn't horrible because of the extra playoff games.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The playoff games change so much.
Right.
But
I don't know that you would almost have to, even with the playoff games, you would almost have to say, okay, I'm going to use all my college eligibility to break that record. But
yeah. And Book it worked out so well because it was like he was good enough that no one's gonna start over Ian Book. Like but he wasn't good enough to go pro.
Nor was he good enough to lift you and to lift you to college football playoff wins.
Right. So Tex Andy said if Carr is all we think he should be, he's only here for 2 years. Mark with Glasson says Leonard got halfway there in 1 year because Book won 30. What was it?
I'm gonna look that up real quick
Yeah.
while you dance around.
Yeah. So yeah, Justin Kane just asked the same. I want to say it's at least about 30. Yeah, Todd says Eric the GOAT plus singer. Absolutely.
He had 30.
30.
So he
So,
would
yeah.
have to be, if they went, let's say 15-1, I guess he could do it in 2 years. 2 15-game seasons would
That would
get
be-
him a tie.
Yeah, but 15 you're winning unless you have a bye. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're it's gonna be very difficult to do in 2 years.
He
But
would
very
have to,
ideal. Very
right.
ideal. So there you go. Yeah, Mark says Focus 30-3. Leonard was 14-2. So Eric, I really appreciate you popping on.
I'm glad you guys
Absolutely.
put up with me.
Not only put up with you, I think everyone enjoyed it, and I certainly did as well. So if you like Eric, hit the thumbs up. If you don't like Eric, hit the thumbs up. And if you do like Eric, let us know in the comments. Yell at me. Mike, we need more Eric Hansen. So let me know. And that is going to do it for this week's Notre Dame Football Show. Hit the thumbs up if you have not done so yet. We will be live actually tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to do my recruiting show with Kyle Kelly on Thursday afternoon. And then we will be live next Tuesday for the Notre Dame six-pack. And then Tim should be back. Otherwise, Eric, I'll call you again next Wednesday. But Tim should be back next Wednesday night. And we'll talk about whatever's going on in the world of Notre Dame football and recruiting. Again, folks, really appreciate you for tuning in. And as always, we'll catch you next time.